All right, Rabosai, good morning, good morning. We have a beautiful, beautiful daf ahead of us today. Let us begin. We'll begin by thanking our sponsors for today's shir. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Adar Aleph, Paul and Kathy Pollack, for dedicating all of the shiurim and drashos this month in memory of their grandparents, Zechariah Ben Zechariah and Dinah Bas Rab Dov. We also thank Art and Shari Miller for dedicating all the Shimon Drashos this month in memory of Art's brother, Reuven Ben Betzalel Rachel, as well as our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Naftoli Ellen Edinger, in honor of Binyomin Levi Edinger's birthday. When you see Binyomin walking today, you'll wish him, make sure to wish him a happy birthday. Such a beautiful dedication. With that, let us begin. Okay, so I'll say, today's daf is daf ches. We are going to pick up on Zayin Amud Beis. With your permission, we're actually going to pick up a little bit earlier than where we actually left off, just for the sake of a little bit of daf continuity. You're going to see, Baruch Hashem, we're going to fly through it today in Meretz Hashem. So let's pick up again at the Mishnah on Zayin Amud Beis. So a little bit high up on Amud Beis. We left off at the Gemara, but just a quick recap of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says as follows: Olos b'moed bos menachulin. Olos. I will say again, in this context, whenever we see Ola, we always assume that Ola refers to what? That Ola is a reference to Olas Re'iyah. So the Olos on Yom Tiv ultimately again come from Chulin, come from unconsecrated animals. V'ashlamim, but shlamim, which again, shlamim could refer to one of two things. Shlamim could refer to Shamei Chagigah, or shlamim could refer to Shamei Simcha. Remember, Shamei Chagigah are obligatory, Shamei Simcha are not. Shamei Simcha are there if a person wants to have meat over the course of Yom Tiv. The Shamei Simcha are there to ensure that occurs. So Shlamim mina Meiser. Shlamim have the ability to be brought from Meiser Sheni. So once again, remember, Meiser Sheni is a tithe that the Jewish farmer is obligated to go ahead and separate. He's obligated to bring that to Yerushalayim. In Yerushalayim, he's obligated to spend that money on food items. Salach l'maisa, the Mishnah says you can purchase your shlamim from Meiser Sheni money. B'moed, on Chalamoed, ba'os min achulin. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped. Right. Yom Tov Rishon Shal Pesach. What about on the first day of Pesach? So now referring over here to Shamei Chagigah. Beis Shammai Omrim Min Achulin, Ubeis Hillel Omrim Min Meiser. Beis Shammai says you have to bring Shamei Chagigah on the first day of Pesach. Why we're singling out the first day of Pesach, we'll discuss in the Gemara. On the first day of Pesach, Beis Shammai says ultimately your Shamei Chagigah have to come from Chulin. Beis Hillel says even from Meiser Sheni. The Mishnah then ends off, Yisrael Yotzin Yedei Chavasam B'Nedarim V'Nedavos U'B'Meiser Behema. So now this is a general statement, as Rashi explains, that when it comes to Simcha, remember again, there's a mitzvah on Yom Tov V'Samachta B'Chagigah, and one of the ways in which we fulfill that particular mitzvah is through the consumption of meat. Where does that meat come from? So the Mishnah therefore says the truth is that meat could really come from anywhere. Could come from a consecrated source, an unconsecrated source. So therefore, again, the Mishnah says, Yisrael Yotzin Chavasan Nidar Davos. So also remember again, let's say I already had pledged to bring karbanos to the Beis Hamikdash. The meat from those karbanos ultimately could serve as my Yom Tiv meat, my non-obligatory Yom Tiv meat. So Nadar Davos, Meiser Behema, Kohanim could fulfill their mitzvah of Simcha with the meat of Chataos, Ashamos, Bechar, Chazei V'Shok, Avalo Ba'ofos, V'lo B'Menachos. But I will say, what doesn't count towards Simcha are bird offerings, or meat from birds, or minachos, mincha offerings. Good. So we'll say, that's just the Mishnah. That's just what we saw yesterday, just to help kind of clarify this a little bit again for the Gemara. So we'll say, the principle here that the Mishnah is operating with is the following concept. Obligatory things cannot be, let's see it differently. Your obligation, okay, here's the way to say it. Your obligations cannot be paid for through consecrated monies. Obligations must be paid for through chulin. I'll just point out for just a moment, this is not a concept that is unique to karbanos. You know where this concept comes up all of the time. I have an obligation to separate out Meiser, right? So I get a paycheck, I separate out Meiser from my paycheck. Okay, if a person could do 10%, that's wonderful. Can't do 10%, do whatever you can do. So I set aside, I take money from my checking account, and I transfer it into a charitable account, which in general, by the way, is a good idea, to have a separate account for Meiser, for tzedakah money. It's always dangerous to keep monies intertwined, even if you keep a good accounting of it. So I take money out from my regular checking account, I put it in my charitable account, my Meiser account. So I will say, so now let's say again, things come up. What could I use Meiser money for? What can't I use Meiser money for? I want to buy myself a new pair of tefillin. Can I use Meiser money for that? I want to buy lulav and esrog. Can I use Meiser money for that? I want to pay my shul dues. Can I use Meiser money for that? So I will say, so the general rule is like this. Anything you're obligated to do, you cannot use Meiser money for. Anything you have to do. So you can't use tzedakah money to buy lulav and esrog. You can't do that. You can't do that because I'm obligated to buy lulav and esrog. Now, interestingly enough, with tefillin, if I have a pair of tefillin and I want to buy a nicer pair of tefillin, according to most poskim, you can use Meiser money for that because I'm not obligated to. I have tefillin. So I will say, so in general, the halacha is, when it comes to obligations, standing obligations cannot be satisfied with consecrated, or in this case, tzedakah money. It's the same principle here. Whatever sacrificial obligations devolve upon you, those obligations have to be satisfied through chulin. So for example, the Mishnah says, your olas re'iyah, you can't bring your olas re'iyah from Meiser Sheni money. Right? Meiser Sheni money is essentially your tzedakah money. You can't, it's just the difference is, it's not a good example because Meiser Sheni money you can spend on yourself. You just have to spend it on yourself in Yerushalayim. So ultimately, again, your olas re'iyah can't come from consecrated money. It has to come from chulin. Contrast that, let's say, for example, with Shalmei Simcha. Shalmei Simcha are not obligatory. I will say, what's right that Shalmei Simcha aren't obligatory? How do Shalmei Simcha aren't obligatory? Let's say you own a butcher, right? You're a butcher. Right? So you come to Yerushalayim with plenty of meat. I don't need to shecht any more karbanos meat. I have plenty of meat. So therefore, Shalmei Simcha are optional. So because they're optional, technically speaking, one could use consecrated funds to go ahead and satisfy that obligation. So we'll say that's just the backdrop. We'll delve into that more now, but just to give you that construct. It says the Gemara, Ela olos b'moed hu debaos min hachulin habiyam tov min ha'maiser. So 1 second. From the Mishnah, I would infer that when you bring your olas re'iyah on Chalamayid, that's ultimately when what? That's when it comes from Chulin. But if you were to bring it on Yom Tiv, it could even come from Meiser Sheni. How could that be? Amai. Davar shebechovehi. We'll say, here's the principle. This is the principle. Davar shebechovehi. The Olas Re'iyah is an obligation, obligatory offering. The Chol Davar shebechove eino ba ela min hachulin. We'll say, here is the principle. Any obligatory, in this case, we'll just focus on karbanos. Any obligatory sacrifice has to come from Chulin. Cannot come from something that is already consecrated. Maybe you'll say the Mishnah is coming to teach me that, interestingly enough, the olas re'iyah cannot be brought on Yom Tiv. It can only be brought on Chalamayid. So we'll say, Kiman, whose opinion would that reflect? Kibei Shammai. They will say, this is the position of Beis Shammai. This nan we learned. But we already saw this. We saw this already, this Mishnah in Maseches Be'ah. Beis Shammai says, Mevian shlamim ve'in somchin alehen, avalo olos. We'll say, Beis Shammai says that, I'm going to work backwards, on Yom Tiv you can't bring in olah. Why can't you bring in olah? Because remember again, which part of the olah do you get to consume as the owner? None of it. So Beis Shammai says the only time you're permitted to bring karbanos on Yom Tiv is when you get some material, physical benefit from it. But Lamaisa, again, an olah which is fully consumed on the Mizbeach, ultimately, again, you get no benefit, therefore you can't bring it. Shlamim, you can bring, however, according to Beis Shammai, there is no smicha. Avalo olos, good. Beis Hillel says, no, Mevian shlamim, va'olos, v'somchen alein. Beis Hillel, on the other hand, says, no, on Yom Tov you're allowed to bring shlamim, you're allowed to bring olos, and you could do smicha. Now remember, again, according to Beis Hillel, what's the qualification? What can't you bring? Right? You can't bring nidarim and nidavos. Right? According to Beis Hillel, you can't just bring what we'll call optional karbanos. Optional karbanos, ultimately on Yom Tov. Again, so therefore the Gemara says, you're right, Chisure mechsira v'hachi katani. The Gemara says, you're right, there's a part of the Mishnah that's missing. And here's how you have to read the Mishnah. So now, it's all going to come together. It's so beautiful when it all comes together. Says the Gemara, Olos nidarim and nidavos. So we'll say, let's say you have Olos, and those Olos, whatever they are, maybe they're comprised of nidarim, nidavos, so b'moed bos. So we'll say, again, there's two halachas over here, right? So halacha number one is you have general Olos. Whether those Olos are Olos because they're nidarim, vow offerings, or nidavos, voluntary gift offerings, those could be brought on Chalamayid. B'moed ba'os, b'yom tov ein on ba'os. What I just said before. Why can't they be brought on Yom Tiv? Why can't they be brought on Yom Tiv? Rabbi say there's a general halacha that the only karbanos you're allowed to bring on Yom Tiv are what? Yom Tiv specific karbanos. Because you have to understand something. When we go to Yerushalayim for Aliyah Rebbe, Hashem, we're going to rebuild the third base Hamikdash here of Yameinu. So we're going to go up in Meretz Hashem this coming Pesach to Yerushalayim to the base Hamikdash. So in addition to my current Pesach, what am I bringing with me? I'm going to be bringing with me probably a couple of chatos for just some stuff that's happened over the course of the year, right? And I'm also probably going to bring nidarim and nidavos because at the end of the day, maybe I was in some difficult situation and I made a neder that Hashem, if you deliver me from this, I'm going to bring you a carbon or this, that. So usually when you come to Hashem, you come with a whole bunch of stuff. So we'll say, on Yom Tiv, you're allowed to offer up whatever is Yom Tiv centric. What you can't offer up is anything that is not related to Yom Tiv. So on Yom Tiv itself, you could offer up any Yom Tiv carbon, be it an Olah or a Shlamim. What you can't offer up are Nedarim and Nedavas. When can you offer up Nedarim and Nedavas? On Yom Tiv. On Chalamayid. However, b'may bos, b'yontei banos, Olos Re'iyah. What's the word about it? Your Olas Re'iyah. Afilu b'Yom Tiv. So what's my Olas Re'iyah? That I could bring even on Yom Tiv itself. Ukishiba eina ba ela min achulin. So we'll say, but when you bring your Olas Re'iyah, what does Olas Re'iyah have to come from? Olas Re'iyah must come from a previously unconsecrated animal. Right? Olas Re'iyah cannot come from a consecrated animal. V'shamei simcha ba'in af min hamaiser. But say shamei simcha, on the other hand, they could come even from Meiser. I will say, when you see Meiser unqualified, what is that referring to? Meiser Sheni. So you can go ahead and you could go ahead and bring your Shami Simcha even from Meiser Sheni. V'chagigas Yom Tov. So we'll say, so again, we're going out through the list. So far, here's what we've got. Let's work backwards. Olas Re'iyah can be brought even on Yom Tov itself. Must come from chulin, unconsecrated animal. Shamei Chagigah ultimately could come also on Yom Tiv, even from what? Meiser Sheni. Nidarim, Nidavos cannot be brought on Yom Tiv, can only be brought on Chalamayid. Beautiful. V'chagigas Yom Tov Rishon Shal Pesach. They will say, what about the Chagigah of the first day of Pesach? So the Gemara says, so listen to this. So remember, so the Chagigah on first day Pesach is also what we call a Davar Shebechova, an obligatory offering, right? This is the Shalmi Chagigah of Pesach. So the Chagigah of the first day of Pesach, here we go. The Chagigah is Yom Tov Rishon Shal Pesach, Beishamai Omrim Min HaChulin, Ubeisila Omrim Min HaMeiser. Beishamai says that could be brought from Chulin, and Beis Hillel says that ultimately, again, it can be brought even from Meiser Sheni. Tanya Namiyachis. We'll say, let's analyze this. Right, so that supports this. Olos, Nedarim, Inedavos, B'moid, Ba'os, B'moid, Ba'os, B'yom Tov, Einan Ba'os. So we'll say, so the Brisa says, Nedarim and Nedavos, right? Olos, that are comprised of Nedarim and Nedavos, can be brought on Chalamayid, cannot be brought on Yom Tiv. Va'olas Re'iyah, what about an Olas Re'iyah? Ba'a afilu b'Yom Tiv. Olas Re'iyah could be brought even on Yom Tiv itself. Ukishiba eina ba ela min achulin. We'll say the Brisa is just restating that what we just said before. And when you bring your Olas Re'iyah could only come from chulin. V'shamei simcha. Now I will say, this is category 3 of karbanos. Why do you bring shamei simcha? For meat. Right? Remember, unlike the Shami Chagigah, which is an obligatory offering, Ol Asriya, obligatory offering, Shami Simcha are there. We're going to see this in the next Mishnah, because you need extra meat on Yom Tiv. So if you need extra meat on Yom Tiv, the idea is you bring a shlamim, and from that you have your meat. So Shami Simcha bo'in af min ha-maiser. That comes even from Maiser Sheni. V'chagigas Yom Tov harishon shal Pesach, and the carbon Chagigah, Shami Chagigah, of the first day of Pesach, Ve'shami omrim min ha-chulin, Ubeisila omrim min ha-maiser. Good. Shabbos said, by the way, it's very exciting to learn Gemaras and Brises like this. Why? Because often when it comes to the world of Karbanos, we often feel like we operate in a fog. Right? And it's very beautiful when you begin to get a grasp on the information and begin to really understand what we do when. So now I understand again, Abosai, so one more time, I understand. Olas Re'iyah, ideally brought on the first day Yom Tiv, comes from Chulin. Shalmi Chagigah, also ideally brought first day Yom Tiv, on Yom Tiv, can come even from Maiser Sheni. Shalmei Simcha, which is really, it's a karban, because it is a shlamim, but its sole purpose is to provide me with meat. Could come from what? Pretty much anything. Beautiful. Nadarim and Nedavos, or Olos, Nadarim and Nedavos, which means we'll say Nadarim and Nedavos offering. It doesn't matter if the Nadarim and Nedavos are Olos or Shlamim, cannot be brought on Yom Tiv, can only be brought on Chalamayid. Beautiful. And of course, those also have to come from Chulin, unconsecrated items. Beautiful. So we'll say, now the Gemara asks, Maishna Chagigas Yom Tov Harishon Shal Pesach. So we'll say, it's interesting because already in the Mishnah, we have this hyper focus on the Shami Chagigah of Pesach. So we'll say, why are we focusing on the... So we'll say, so again, when you think about it, there's an obligation to bring Shami Chagigah on all three regalim, right? Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos. Yet the Mishnah records a specific machlokas regarding the Shami Chagigah of the first day of Pesach, telling me that Beis Shammai holds that halacha l'maisa. Beis Shammai holds that they have to come. Beis Shammai holds that they have to come from Chulin, and Beis Hillel holds that they could even come from Maiser Sheni. So ask the Gemara, why are we focusing on the Shami? In other words, why the Shami Chagigah of Pesach? Why are they singled out? So Maishna. Okay, so the Gemara Chagigas Yom Tov Rishon. So the Gemara says Maishna Chagigas Yom Tov Rishon Shal Pesach. Why is the Chagigah of the first day of Pesach singled out? Amar Ravashi Hakamashmalan Chagigas Chamisha Asar in Chagigas Arba Asar lo. I will say, watch this. This is fascinating. There are two carbon Chagigahs by Pesach. There's a carbon Chagigah on the 14th, and there's a carbon Chagigah on the 15th. Watch this. Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Last Rashi on the daf. Chagigas Yudalid Lo. Listen to this. Kilomar Lohachi Nokat Pesach Lefishi Yesh Erev Pesach Chagiga Acheres Kishahaisa Chaburas Pesach Meruba Hayemevian Imo Chagiga Kadeshi Pesach Nechal Ala Sova Ve'ashma Inon Masnisin De Chagigas Yom Tov Atzmahu De Einaba Ela Min Achulin Aval Chagigas Arba Sarba Af Min Hazos. This is absolutely incredible. We'll say there's two Chagigas on Pesach. There's a Chagigah on the 14th. Now the 14th is Erev Pesach, and there's a Chagigah on the 15th. Now why you bring a Chagigah on the 14th? So it says Rashi, very interesting. We'll say you are bringing your Korban Pesach. Remember, you're offering your Korban Pesach on Erev Pesach. Let's say you have a large Chabura. I have a large Chabura, which means the ideal is, let's work backwards. If I have a small Chabura, everybody's going to partake of the Korban Pesach, and that's going to be enough for their meal. Let's say I have a large group. Baruch Hashem, I have a large group. So what's going to end up happening? Everyone's only going to get a small piece of Korban Pesach. So what's the meal? What am I serving? And the answer is, what's on the menu? Chagigah. Chagigah's on the menu. That's when you would bring a Korban Chagigah on the 14th. Now that would be in addition to the Korban Chagigah that you're bringing on the 15th for the first day of Yom Tiv. So therefore, Abu Said, the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says the Chagigah that's brought on the 14th, that could come even from Maiser Sheni, or even from Maiser Behema, as we'll see. The Chagigah on the 15th, which is your Yom Tiv Chagigah, that must come from Chulin. That's the distinction. So says the Gemara, Hakamash Malan, Chagigas Chamisha Asar in, Chagigas Arba Asar lo. Top of Ches, Alma Kasavar, Chagigas Arba Asar lav da'oraisa. Right, therefore the Gemara says, what do you see from here? That the Chagigah of the 14th is not a biblical obligation. Not a biblical obligation. So therefore I will say, this is very interesting. Really, another fascinating nugget. So first of all, I have apparently the possibility for two Chagigahs on Erev Yom Tiv, on Pesach, one on the 14th Erev Yom Tiv to accompany the Korban Pesach, one on the 15th, which is my Shalmei Chagigah of Yom Tiv itself. Where's the distinction? The Chagigah of the 14th is not biblical. Because it's not biblical, therefore what? It could even come from Meiser Sheni. The Chagigah on the 15th is biblical, and therefore must come from what? From Chulin. Incredible. Amar Mar, Beis Hillel says, Min HaMeiser. So I will say, now listen to this. Beis Hillel hold that Shalmei Chagigah, in general, Shalmei Chagigah can come from Meiser Behema. Could come from Meiser. I'm sorry. Could come from, shouldn't say Meiser. Min HaMeiser, come from Meiser Sheni. So you could pay from your Shalmei Chagigah from Meiser Sheni. I want to point out, you understand the incredible savings included in that, right? Remember again, because Meiser Sheni is already set aside, right? In other words, that is already consecrated funds. Granted, it's consecrated funds that I can spend on myself, but the ability to utilize Meiser Sheni money for sacrificial purposes is huge. It's huge. So Beis Hillel says that halacha l'maisa, you could pay for your Shalmei Chagigah from Meiser Sheni money. To which the Gemara says, why? Amai davar shebechovahu. This is an obligation. V'chol davar shebechova eino ba ela min hachulin. And at the end of the day, right, an obligatory offering must be taken care of from unconsecrated items. Davar shebechova eino ba ela min hachulin. I will say, I just point out something amazing. Why is that? Right? Davar shebechova eino ba ela min hachulin. Right? What's the pshat with that? What's the pshat? So I will say, I think the pshat is a very simple one. When you have a davar shebechova, if you know in life there's something you have to accomplish, you know again there's a carbon you have to bring, right? There's a kirva, there's a closeness that you have to create between yourself and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts to Kedusha. There are no shortcuts, ultimately, again, to carbon, to kirva, to closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You see, the use of already consecrated funds, like, in other words, I already have a pot of money that's consecrated. The use of that represents a sacrificial shortcut. And what the Gemara is saying is, are there times in life for shortcuts? Absolutely. When it comes to a davar shebechova, right? When it comes ultimately, again, to an obligation you have, when it comes to something that you must accomplish, has to be minachulin. Minachulin means you have to start from square one. You have to start from the beginning and make your way towards the finish line. There are no shortcuts when it comes to Dvarim Shebikdusha. Such an incredible yisod. So I'll say, but what does it mean? But Beis Hillel is telling me that I could use money of Meiser Sheni to go ahead and take care of what? Of my Shalmei Chagigah. So what's the answer? I'll say, this is incredible. Amar Ula Betofel. Now I'll say, this introduces a new sugya. Not a new sugya, it's all the same sugya. I'll say, whoever thought karbanos could be so exciting? No? It's absolutely incredible. It's mamish absolutely incredible. Good. So listen to this. So what's the answer? All right, not as much as Orlando. I hear the murmuring going on back there. I got it. Fine, got it. Right. So listen to this. Says the Gemara something amazing. What can you do? Tofel. Now both say, look at Rashi for just a moment. This is fantastic. The Gemara says Tofel is mechaber meiser imachulin umevi. Now watch this. So I will say the Gemara is like this. You're right. So also we have a problem. Beis Hillel is telling me that I can bring Shalmei Chagigah from Meiser Sheni money. Okay, that seems to fly in the face of a principle, and the principle is you must bring obligatory offerings from Chulin, unconsecrated funds. So how do I reconcile those two ideas? Which the Gemara says Tofel. Tofel I will say means that you could combine Meiser Sheni money. Or I should say, right now we'll use money. You could combine Meiser Sheni money with Chulin money in order to go ahead and purchase your Shami Chagigah. So when Beis Hillel says that you could use Meiser Sheni money to go ahead and purchase your Shami Chagigah, they meant you could supplement your Chulin money with Meiser Sheni money to purchase your Shami Chagigah. Incredible. Now there's machlokes. Watch this. So the Gemara says, B'tofel. So we'll say, what does Toflin mean? So Chizkiah Amar Toflin behema lebehema vein Toflin ma'os la'ma'os. So listen to this. So Chizkiah says, Toflin means, by the way, you could combine animals, but you can never combine money. Now what does that mean? Look at Rashi for just a moment. Chizkiah Amar behema lebehema im yesh lo ochlin harbe ve'ein lo sipuk bebehema achos. Yavi achas lechagigah min achulin v'ashar min hamaiser v'afal pesha kulan abas b'yom rishon shem chagigah lein k'mar yatsi dechol rishon. Listen to this. So Chizkiah says, what does Tofel mean? Tofel means like this, Rabbi say. Now remember again, you have a big family, Baruch Hashem. Let's say a person has a large group that's with them in Yerushalayim. I need more than one animal. One animal is not going to do it. So Chizkiah says what you could do is, as long as your first animal is from Chulin, you could bring subsequent Shamei Chagigah animals even from what? From Meiser Sheni. But at no point in time can you ever mix Chulin money with Meiser Sheni money. So again, Chizkiah says Toflin or Tofel means you could combine animals. I could take my first animal from Chulin and subsequent Shamei Chagigah from Meiser Sheni. But that's what Toflin means. But I can't combine Chulin money with Meiser Sheni money. Look at Rashi. Vein Toflin ma'os l'ma'os liknos behema gedola. See, Rabosai, Chizkiah says you can't. If you have a large group, you can't go ahead and take Chulin money, Meiser Sheni money, combine that money, and then use it to purchase a larger animal. So the Gemara will say, now listen to this. Rabbi Yochanan says, no. Toflin ma'os l'ma'os. They Toflin behema lebehema. Basically, Rabbi Yochanan says just the opposite. Toflin means you could take Meiser Sheni money, combine it with Chulin money, in order to, when I will say, why am I combining? What am I doing? In order to do what? Buy a larger animal. That's my goal. So Rabbi Yochanan says you could combine monies. What you can't do is start combining animals. By the way, when I say combining animals, what I mean is the first animal is bought from Meiser Sheni money, and the subsequent animals are bought from Chulin money, but they're all called Shamei Chagigah. So we'll say, look at Rashi just a moment. It's Rashi, Divrei Maschal ve'in Tovlim be'mos l'ma'os. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Ibcha. So, Lemar is Chazi le'shapir. Tfei yitzias yedei chavasa min achulin. Or kishemevi behema shlema min achulin. Or Lemar is Chazi le'shapir tfei kishechulin me'uravin. Imkol achilosav. So I will say, you have a fundamental machlokes as to how this mechanism of Toflin works. So I will say, here's what's interesting. So everyone agrees that when Beis Hillel says that on the first day of Yom Tiv, you can go ahead and bring your Shamei Chagigah from Meiser Sheni, he didn't really mean Meiser Sheni. What did he mean? Meiser Sheni funds mixed with Chulin funds. A process that we call Toflin. Combining. Now there's a machlokes, incredible. Now there's a machlokes, what does combining look like? So Chizkiah will say combining looks like this. You buy one animal from Meiser Sheni money, and then you're allowed to buy subsequent animals, additional animals that are still called Shamei Chagigah from Meiser Sheni money. Rabbi Yochanan says no. What it means is you can mix the pots. You can mix the monies together, and from the combined monies, you can go ahead and buy a larger animal to service your larger crowd. Incredible. So Tanya Kavase de Chizkiah, Tanya Kavase de Rabbi. We also have a brayso that supports both of these approaches. So here we go. Tanya Kavase de Rabbi Yochanan, a brayso that supports Rabbi Yochanan, who holds both say that we mix monies. He says that misas. So we'll say the pasuk over here that the Gemara is talking about is as follows. The Torah says, "V'asisei chag Shavuos Hashem Elokecha." You shall make a yom tov of Shavuos for Hashem. Misas nidvas yadcha asher titen kasher yivarecha Hashem Elokecha. So we'll say we're going to see now that the way the Gemara translates the word misas is chulin, is as chulin. Right? It means what the Torah is telling me is that when I go and I bring my karbanos on Shavuos, I must bring my karbanos from unconsecrated funds. Misas nidvasiki. Bring your karbanos from unconsecrated funds. Melamed sha'ada mevi chavasa min achulin. So we'll say from that word misas, which means unconsecrated, we learn that a person must satisfy their obligatory obligations from unconsecrated funds. But how do you know that for certain things? Like Shami Chagigah, if you want to mix in consecrated monies with unconsecrated monies to buy a larger animal, that you're allowed to do so. TALMUD Lomar, Kasher Yivarechacha Hashem. Because we both say the pasuk ends off by saying, you should bring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in accordance with that which God has blessed you. Which means that I could go out and take other monies and mix them in with my chulin monies to purchase a larger animal. Good. That's the brisa that supports Rabbi Yochanan. Tanya Kava said the Chizkiah. We have a brisa that supports Chizkiah. What's the brisa? So the Gemara says, Tanya Kava said the Chizkiah. Misas melamed sha'adav maybe chavasa min achulin. So both says, remember again in Chizkiah's model. Remember Chizkiah says you can't mix monies. What you could do is you could bring one animal from chulin and subsequent animals from Meiser Sheni. So brisa that supports Chizkiah. Misas melamed sha'adav maybe chavasa min achulin. Ultimately, again, Misas teaches us that you have to bring your obligatory offering from chulin. Beishamai omrim. So we'll say therefore a brisa that supports both of them. Beishamai omrim. Yom Rishon min achulin, mikan ve'elech min ha'maiser. So we'll say, so now we're bringing in other opinions over here. Beis Shammai says, on the first day, you must bring your korban from chulin, but from the subsequent days, ultimately again, you can go ahead and bring even from meiser sheni. Now look at Rashi just a moment. It's actually right across. Rashi says, Yom Rishon, shehu l'shem Chagigah, yom min achulin. V'les lula Beis Shammai tefela b'davar shebechova. So we'll say Beis Shammai was like this: anything you bring on the first day, in other words, for your obligatory offerings, has to come from chulin. On subsequent days, you want to bring additional karbanos, that could come from meiser sheni. Now, what Beis Shammai essentially is doing over here is rejecting the concept of tefela, of toflin. He rejects that idea. There is no such thing as mixing in consecrated monies with unconsecrated monies to satisfy obligatory obligations, right? Satisfy obligations. There's no such thing. So Beis Shammai categorically rejects that concept. Beis Hillel says something very interesting. Achila Rishona, they say as follows. The first eating, now we'll see exactly what Achila Rishona means. Achila Rishona, right, of ultimately again, Shami Chagigah, min achulin. Mikan ve'elach min ha'maiser. So Beis Hillel, on the other hand, say the first consumption, again, we'll qualify that for just a moment. The first consumption has to come from chulin. Anything subsequent could come from meiser sheni. Now, both say, look at Rashi for just a moment. Achila Rishona, hashta sagadaytcha behema liatzma ve'viena ashulchan rishon. Okay, actually, we'll see. So the Gemara says like this. So the Gemara says, biyom tov my time alo. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped. And the rest of the days of Pesach, Adam Yotzei Dechavaso b'meiser behema. Then I will say, here's what's interesting. Now we're introducing something a little bit new. Beis Hillel says, by the way, so on Yom Tiv, what we call the Achila Rishon, the first act of consumption has to come from chulin, but ultimately again mikan ve'elach min ha'meiser. From after the first consumption, you could use meiser sheni, and for the rest of the days of Yom Tiv after the first day, you could even go ahead and satisfy your obligations through meiser behema. Now both say meiser behema is even bigger because meiser behema literally means I have an animal that was set aside. Right, I could use that animal. So the Gemara says, by the way, b'Yom Tov my time alo. Why can't you use meiser behema on Yom Tov itself? According to Beis Hillel, in other words, Beis Hillel only holds that halacha l'maisa achila rishona, the first act of consumption has to come from chulin. Everything else could come even from consecrated. If that's the case, why just meiser sheni? Why can't I use meiser behema on Yom Tov itself as well? This is fascinating. Amar Ravashi, Dilma'asi la'asure b'Yom Tov. We're concerned that if we allow you to go ahead and use meiser behema on Yom Tov, that you may come to what? You may come to actually tithe on Yom Tov itself. Then I both say, what's wrong with tithing on Yom Tov? You're not allowed to tithe on Yom Tov. Why? Mishum sakarta. And I both say, this is incredible. You see, we always thought the reason we're not allowed to tithe on Yom Tov is why? Because we both say the act of tithing on Yom Tov is a form of tikkun. It's a form of fixing, right? So it's like a tikkun moneh, makeh bepatish, some type of finalizing act. Or, according to some, the issue with tithing, interestingly enough, is gzera mekachu memkar. The problem is it's transactional. And anything transactional kind of wades into the prohibition of engaging in business practices. Here, the Gemara says something dramatically different. You know why you can't tithe animals on Yom Tiv? because of the red dye. Let's remember again, how would you separate out Meiser Behema? Mir Hashem, we're going to know this soon. If you own, right? So, right, you put them in a pen, right? You put them in a pen, you have a small opening, they come out one at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Animal number 10 comes out, you take a little bit of red paint, red dye, and you put it on the animal. So listen to this. So says Rashi, Mishum Sakarta, Shetzovo. So here's the problem. That red dye is essentially a dyeing of wool. This nan bebechoros hayotzi ba'asiri sokro besikra va'omer harei zemaiser v'utseva adom shetzomo chised. So both said, here's the problem. The problem ultimately, again, of separating out meiser behema on Yom Tiv is a problem of dyeing wool. Isn't that incredible? A problem of dyeing, right? Soveya is one of the 39 malachos. You're not allowed to dye on Yom Tiv itself. Incredible. So the Gemara says, my mashma hai misas lishon dechot. So we're just going back for just a moment. Everyone darshan the word misas, ultimately again to mean what? To mean unconsecrated. We'll say, how do you know the word misas means unconsecrated? So listen to this. Tichsiv. We'll say, get ready. Tichsiv, vayosem hamelech achashverosh mas al haaretz. The pasuk says that Achashverosh placed a mas. What's a mas? A mas is a tax. Unconsecrated funds, right? Unconsecrated funds. So from here you see misas means unconsecrated funds like mas Allah. So also I just point out how incredible is this. The halacha is shloshim yom kodem achag, 30 days before a Yom Tiv. You're supposed to start immersing yourself in the topic of the Yom Tiv. Here we are, mamish right after Purim Katan, Shushan Purim Katan, pasuk from the Megillah. Absolutely incredible. So we'll say, so that's how we know misas. The word misas ultimately means unconsecrated monies. We'll say, incredible. So we'll say, so just in general, how do we paskin over here? There's a number. So first of all, this idea. So we know, here's what we know. We know that halacha l'maisa, well, let's see. So the Rambam says, we'll say, so remember, we have a lot of stuff going on over here. In terms of specifically, what karbanos could come from what? So here you have it. This is Hilchos Chagigah, Perek Beis Halacha Ches. We'll say, here we go. Ola Sriya Enaba Ela Min Achulin. Kishar Karbanos Shadu Chayban. So we'll say, so number one, this already we know. Ola Sriya, which is an Ola, fully consumed in the Mizbeach, can only come from Chulin. Right? It has to come from unconsecrated funds. Right? And remember again, we've already established, when is Ola Sriya offered up? When is it offered up? First day Yom Tiv. If you don't get a chance to offer it first day, you could offer it subsequent days. But ideally, pass like Beis Hillel, it's offered up first day. So Ola Sriya, first day, has to come from Chulin. Aval, here we go. Shami Chagigah, Baos Mimaos Maos Meiser Sheni, Hami'uravos in Maos Chulin. The boss said, listen to this, the Rambam Paskins, Toflin, for Shami Chagigah, you could combine monies. So Rabbi say, whose version of Toflin does he accept? Whose version? Rabbi Yochanan, that you could combine monies in order to buy a larger animal. So Rabbi say, it's so exciting. So halacha l'maisa, for Shami Chagigah, we pass in Toflin, you could combine your Meiser Sheni money with your Chulin money. Rabbi Yochanan, buy a larger animal. Right? V'lokeach min ha'taroves behema u'makriva Shami Chagigah. But the boss say, remember again, but how do we paskin? So we paskin like Beis Hillel. What did Beis Hillel say? Beis Hillel says this works provided that what? Achila Rishona, which we translate as the first consumption comes from Chulin. What does that mean? So the Rambam says, look, he says, V'hu she'eshir achila Rishona min ha'chulin. Mepnei sheshami Chagigah chova. So we'll say, so the Rambam Pask is like Beis Hillel, provide this Toflin works, so you could buy a larger Shami Chagigah from combined Chulin animals with Meiser Sheni, from combined Chulin money with Meiser Sheni money, provided that your first consumption is from Chulin. So what does it mean first consumption? Let's go back to yesterday's daf. We saw the Rambam, what's the minimum value of your Shami Chagigah? 2 silver pieces. Shabbos said the idea being is your combined Chagigah must have at least 2 silver pieces of Chulin money, right? So as long as you meet that minimum threshold of Chulin money, that's what's called Achila Rishona. So as long as your first consumption, which means a minimum amount of 2 silver pieces from Chulin are there, You can mix in as much additional Meiser Sheni money as you want to, buy a larger animal, and you're good to go. So we'll say really incredible. So we've got Olas Riyah. Olas Riyah has to come from Chulin. Shami Chagigah, we paskin Toflin. You could combine Meiser Sheni money in with Chulin money. We pass like Rabbi Yochanan's version of Toflin, that it's a combination of monies, not a combination of animals, provided that again you have a minimum of 2 silver pieces of Chulin, so that again your Achila Rishona, your first act of consumption, comes from Chulin. Incredible. But let's go right there. Says the Gemara, Yisrael Yotzin Yidei Chavasam and Darman and Davas. Well, so now we're going to transition a little bit to speaking about Shamei Simcha. So remember again, the Mishnah said that for Shamei Simcha, Rabosai, you can pretty much use what? You could use anything. You could use anything. So Yisrael Yotzei with Chavas Darman Tarabanan. V'samachta bechagecha. The Torah says you should rejoice on your Yom Tov. L'rabos kol minei smachos l'simcha. To go ahead and tell you that you could use all types of simcha. What does that mean? First of all, look at Rashi, v'samachta. Last Rashi on the daf. Kol smachos b'mashmo. All types of simcha are included in this. The lo b'yminei ela simcha v'armar in simcha ela b'basar v'hai basar. So essentially, you could fulfill your obligation of v'samachta b'chagecha to rejoice on Yom Tov with shamei simcha, with meat. And what could satisfy the obligation of shamei simcha? Anything that provides you meat. So whether it's Kodesh, whether it's Chol, it does not make any difference. So says the Gemara, as long as it's meat, says the Gemara, Amru Chachamim, Mikan Amru Chachamim, Yisrael Yotzi Nechavasam ben Nadar ben Nadavos, ben Meiser behema. So both say, therefore again, Yisrael could fulfill his obligation ultimately again with Nidarim, Nidavos, Meiser behema. In other words, even if these are consecrated items, as long as they give you meat, you're good to go. V'kohanim, bechatos, v'asham, bibechar, bechazev, v'shok. Kohanim ultimately again could fulfill the mitzvah of V'samachta b'chagecha simchas Yom Tov with the meat of a chatos, the meat of an asham, the meat of bechar, the chest and the thigh. Yachal ach ba'ofos u'menachos. You might have thought maybe it works with bird meat and with meal offerings. Talmud lomar v'samachta b'chagecha amud beis. Therefore, the Torah says v'samachta b'chagecha. Now, I will say chagecha is also a reference to what? Bless you. A reference to Chagigah. Mishe Chagigah ba'em mehem. I will say, what can you use for Shamei Simcha? For Shamei Simcha, you could use that which is used for Chagigah. Yatsu elu she'ein Chagigah ba'em mehem. I will say, what can be used for Chagigah? Chagigah is an animal. What can't you use for Chagigah? Birds and menachos. Ravashi says, Mi v'samachta nafka, Yatsu elu she'bem simcha. Ravashi is very simple. V'samachta v'chagecha means what gives you joy. Right? What doesn't give you joy? Birds and flour. Right? Everyone knows that. Right? What gives you joy? Meat. Right? So therefore, I will say, again, halacha l'maisa, Shamei Simcha comes from meat. Ravashi hai b'chagecha my aved. So we'll say, what does Ravashi do with the word b'chagecha? So we saw this before. So hahu l'chid Rav Daniel bar Katina. Dam Rav Daniel bar Katina amar Rav. Minay she'nosin nashim b'moed. How do you know that you're not allowed to get married on Chol HaMoed? Shene'emar b'samachta b'chagecha v'lo b'ishtecha. We'll say, how do you know that you're not supposed to get married on Chol HaMoed? Because the pasuk says, "V'samachta b'chagecha," you should rejoice on your Yom Tov, and we learn from there, rejoice from Yom Tov and not from your wife. Meaning that your simcha on Yom Tov should be a simcha that emanates from Yom Tov, and not a simcha that emanates because of marriage. So we'll say, so therefore now we have a beautifully well-rounded comprehension of the karbanos of Yom Tov. So if we put this all together, we've got our olas riyah, which is an olah fully consumed in the mizbeach, comes on the first day of Yom Tov, must be brought from chulin. Excellent. We then have next our shami chagigah, carbon chagigah, also obligatory offering. Again, you could bring it from chulin, but we also saw the Rambam Paskin's toflin. You could combine Meiser Sheni money together with chulin money in order to buy a larger animal, provided that what? Achila Rishona, the first consumption, i.e. the two silver piece minimum, comes from chulin. Good. Next we have Shamei Simcha. Rabbi say, why do we have Shamei Simcha? V'samachta b'chagecha. Shamei Simcha are just there; they're not obligatory. Right? In other words, so I could keep on saying, if I have meat from another source, I don't have to bring Shamei Simcha. But if I'm going to need meat, that meat should come from Shamei Simcha. From Shalmei Simcha, that carbon is based on the fact that Samachta b'chagecha, Hashem wants me to be happy on Yom Tiv. Happiness comes from eating well, from eating meat, and therefore Allah Lamaisa, that's Shalmei Simcha. What could Shalmei Simcha come from? What could Shalmei Simcha come from? Anything. Chulin, consecrated, doesn't make any difference. As long as it provides meat, ultimately it is usable. Beautiful, Rabbi was saying. Now we have that construct down. We were toe-faced that. It says in Mishnah, I will say, great case. Let's say here's the case. Let's say a person has a large group, right? I'm in Yerushalayim with a large group. So that means many eaters, right? I have a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of eaters, but I don't have a lot of money. So which literally means a lot of eaters, but not a lot of property, right? Not a lot of possessions. So what do? Maybe shlamim merubim ba'olos mu'atos. So I will say such a person will bring more shlamim than olos. Which I will say makes sense, right? Because shlamim, remember again, what does an ola give me? What does an ola give me? Chas v'shalom. An ola doesn't give me nothing. An ola doesn't give me any meat, right? But what it gives me is so much. What you get from an ola, who could even imagine, right? I get no meat out of it. I get no meat. Plenty of ruchnias, but no gashmias, right? On the flip side, shlamim, also a part, remember again, you don't get to eat all the shlamim either, but shlamim give me meat. So therefore the eitzah is, if you come to Yerushalayim, you have a lot of eaters, not a lot of animals, give more shlamim and less olos. So we'll say, take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says over here, ochlin merubim, b'nei bayis rabim, maybe shlamim rabim, shlamim chagigah rabim, lifya ochlin ba'olas yimada. So we'll say, as we're going to see, essentially, all you have to do is bring one olas re'iyah, right? We'll see for who. One olas riyah, but shami chagigah you can bring as many as you want. So what the Mishnah is saying over here essentially is if you're coming with a lot of people, but don't have a lot of, means at your disposal, essentially you bring the basic, what you have to bring for your olah, and you bring more shlamim. Good, next. But we'll say what happens if you have the opposite case. I have a lot of property, a lot of animals, or a lot of money, but not a lot of mouths to feed. Maybe olos, merubos, or shlamu atis. Therefore, we'll say you use your money, bring more olos, less shlamim. Good. So the Gemara says, zeh v'zeh muat. What about if I have a little bit of both? I have a small group, but I also have a small amount of funds. Ne'emar ma'a kesef shtei kesef. So if I will say, in that case, I bring an olas riyah that's worth 1 silver piece, and shlamim that's worth 2 silver pieces. In other words, satisfy your obligation. Zeh v'zeh merubin. We will say, what if you have both? We'll say, halavai, we should all be zocheh to this. Right? A large number of eaters, and Baruch Hashem, a large amount of money. So we'll say, Zeh v'zeh merubim, al zeh ne'emar, ish kimat nas yado, kivirchas Hashem elokech asher nas alach. About such a person, the Torah says, each person should bring in accordance, kimat nas yado, in accordance with what he has, kivirchas Hashem elokech, in accordance with what Hashem has given you. So we'll say, so these are all the variations. What's interesting about this Mishnah is that the Mishnah tells me that there is room to structure the olas riyah shami chagigah dynamic based on my family's needs. Let's analyze a bit. Says the Gemara. So it's really interesting. So I both say shlamim merub mehechamaisi. So I both say here's what's interesting. The first case in the Mishnah was I have a lot of eaters, right? A lot of eaters, right? A lot of mouths to feed, but not a lot of possessions, not a lot of money. So what does the Mishnah suggest? Just bring fewer olos and more shlamim. To which the Gemara says, why is the Mishnah giving this guy an eitzah bringing more shlamim? What does the Mishnah say about his financial situation? Right? He doesn't have a lot of money. He has a lot of mouths, not a lot of money. So the Mishnah says, okay, just bring fewer olos, but more shlamim. How is that a good eitzah? Says the Gemara, shlamim merubim mehecha maisi halesle. The Mishnah says the guy has a lot of mouths, not a lot of possessions. So why are you telling him to bring more shlamim? Where is he getting more shlamim from? Rav Chisda tofel. Or maybe pargada. I will say it goes back to last sugya. Remember again, what do we speak about? Toflin. What does toflin mean? Toflin means, remember, that you could take Meiser Sheni money and combine it with Chulin money in order to go ahead and purchase larger Shalmei Chagigah. Right? So I will say, so again, that's the Mishnah means when it says, excuse me, you remember, for olas riyah, you have to use chulin money, right? You need an olas riyah that has a minimum value of 1 silver piece. that has to be chulin. But I for Shamei Simcha, if you have a large mishpacha, Baruch Hashem, so what can you do? Mix in Meiser Sheni money with your chulin money and buy a larger animal. Amr of Sheshes, Hare Amru, Toflin Behema Lebehema. So Rav Sheshes said, we learned Toflin Behema Lebehema. So let's remember again, Rav Sheshes now is going back to the opinion of Chizkiah, who said, what does Toflin mean? Toflin means that Allah Chalamaysa, what you could do is buy one animal from Chulin, and then you could buy supplemental Shami Chagigah from Meiser Sheni money. So says the Gemara, Maika Amrale. So what exactly is Rav Sheshes coming along to add? Ilema Hachli Kamarle. Perhaps this is what he's saying. Sahare Amru Toflin Behema Lebehema. You could maybe I will say what Rav Sheshes is kind of coming to do is reawaken that previous machlokes. And Rav Sheshes is saying, so Rav Chisda is coming along and saying that Allah Chalamaysa, when the Mishnah says, if you have a lot of mouths but not a lot of money, ultimately bring less olos, more chagigos. How do you do that? Tofel. So again, Rav Chisda seems to be saying Toflin means, like Rabbi Yochanan said, mix together your monies, add in an addition, and buy a bigger animal. Rav Sheshes is coming along and saying, no. What you could do is you can't mix monies, but what you could do is you could buy your first animal from Chulin for Chagigah, and subsequent animals from Meiser Sheni. Se'ilei mehachi kamar, hari amru toflin be'ema lebehema, avalo ma'os l'mos, v'lei malei, in toflin ma'os l'mos. So we'll say, if Rav Sheshes, if you're coming to argue on Rav Chisda, but you're coming to argue on the mechanism of Toflin, then just say it straight out. Elohachi Amrle. Rather, I will say this is what Rav Sheshes is saying. Hare Amru Af Toflin Behema Lebehema. Wow. I will say, watch this. So I will say, Rav Sheshes, the Gemara is suggesting, is coming along and saying, he's not arguing on Rav Chisda. He's coming to add. So I will say, remember again, let's follow the progression. Mishnah says, here's my situation. Baruch Hashem, a lot of mouths to feed, not a lot of money. What should I do on Yom Tiv? What does the Mishnah tell me to do? Less olos, more chagigos. Right? Less olos, more chagigos. Great. How do I accomplish that? So Rav Chisda comes along and says, what should you do? Toflin, which means what? When you purchase your Chagigah animal, take your chulin money, minimum of how much? Too much, 2 silver pieces, add in Meiser Sheni money, and buy a larger animal. Rav Sheshes comes along and says, by the way, Rav Chisda, I just want to tell you, that's not the only way to do Toflin. That's not the only way. How else can you do Toflin? Buy one animal with your Meiser Sheni money, with your chulin money, right? And then what? Buy subsequent animals with your Meiser Sheni money. So I will say, I just want to point out, you say to yourself, like, what does this matter? I will say, it matters a lot. It can matter for the purposes of what's available in the market. In other words, I will say, you might get more value for your money buying multiple animals than buying one big animal. I don't know, whatever the Messias is. The point over here is that Rav Sheshes is just coming along to say, Rav Chisda, there's not only one way to do Toflin. It's not only that you could combine monies. You could also buy additional animals. In other words, buy your first animal with Chulin and buy subsequent animals ultimately with Meiser Sheni money. So the Gemara says, off Toflin behema lebehema. Kiman. So I will say, whose opinion is that? In other words, who actually says? So I will say, so what comes out over here is Rav Sheshes seems to be of the opinion that Toflin means either or. You can either combine monies or buy additional animals. So the Gemara says, whose opinion is that? Rabbi say that's like neither of the previously espoused opinions. Because remember again, Chizkiah was of the opinion that you could only buy additional animals. Rabbi Yochanan was of the opinion that what? You could only combine monies. No one seemed to see that you could do both. The Amorai Hava, the Pligi Masnisa. The Pligi, Masnaisa lo Pligi. So maybe you'll say it's a Machlokes Amoraim, but there was no Machlokes in the Mishnah. V'hakatani achila rishona min achulin. But we said that the first act of consumption has to be from chulin. My achila rishona min achulin. What does it mean when it says the first achila has to be from chulin? Ultimately, again, shir deme achila rishon min achulim. So Rabbi says it's a little bit anticlimactic because I read this to you already from the Rambam in the previous sugya. That Rabbi said at the end of the day we paskin toflin is possible. But what type of toflin is possible? What type? Combination of monies. And when you combine monies, you must make sure that what? The first consumption is from chulin. First consumption of chulin means what? 2 silver pieces. Excellent. Good. Says the Gemara, Amar Ula Amar Reish Lakish, Hifrish Eser Behemos Lechagigaso, Hikriv Chamish B'Yom Tov Rishon, Chozer Makriv Chamish Yom Tov Sheni. So let's listen to this case. We'll begin this sugya today. Both say it's a great case. Let's say you separated out 10 animals for a Chagigah. Now both say, now I want to be clear. So let's be clear. So we'll say you separated out 10 Chagigahs, right? So I separated out 10 Chagigah animals. Now what happens? I offered up 5 of them on the first day of Yom Tiv. I could then offer up this remaining 5 on the second day of Yom Tiv. On the second day of Yom Tiv. Look at Rashi. The Rebbe will say, now what's the chiddush in this? Look at Rashi. Chos Yom Makriv Chamesh B'Yom Tov Sheni. Rashi says, this is in the opinion of Reish Lakish. V'lo amrinan hu b'val tosiv. V'rachmana omar v'chagosem oso chad yoma v'sulo dahanach nami dechad yoma hu ushini tashmud yishran. So let's listen to this. The Torah says that when do you offer up the Karban Chagigah, Rabbi say? When do you offer up Chagigah? When? On the first day of Yom Tiv. So now, Rabbi say, now watch this case. Reish Lakish deals with the following case. I separated out 10 animals from my Karban Chagigah. Reish Lakish says if you offered up 5 on the first day, you can offer up 5 on the second day, and that's not called Bal Tosif. Rabbi say, Bal Tosif is the prohibition to add on to the mitzvahs of the Torah. See, Rabbi said, the Torah tells me that Karban Chagigah is offered up on the first day of Yom Tiv. You might have thought, therefore, offering up Karban Chagigah on the second day of Yom Tiv is called Bal Tosif, adding on to the mitzvah. Reish Lakish says that's not the case. Reish Lakish says, how do we view it? We view the Chagigahs that you offer up on the second day as a makeup for the first day. I didn't get a chance to offer up all the karbanos on the first day, so I'm offering up the remainder on the second day. So Reish Lakish says, the halacha l'maisa, this is mutter. I separated out 10 Chagigahs, offered up 5 on day 1. I could offer up the 5 remaining ones on day 2. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Kevan shepasak shuv eino makri. Rabbi Yochanan says, no. Whatever you got in on day 1, that's it. And you can't offer it up on day 2. Now both say, when we say you can't offer it up on day 2, what does that mean? You can't offer it up as Shamei Chagigah on day number 2. Shamei Chagigah are only offered up on day 1. You could offer up animals as any other. You could do Nedarim, Davos, whatever you want. But Shamei Chagigah are only on day 1, cannot be offered up on day 2. So I will say, now watch this. Rabbi Abi says, V'lo pligi, they're not really arguing. V'lo pligi, kam bistam, kam b'mefarish. We will say, what does that mean? Look at Rashi, bistam. Im hifrish stam eno chozer umakrivan kid mefarish va'azil kan b'mefarish, almost done, kan b'mefarish damar behedra liyom rishon ani mafrish eskulan chozer umakriv she'eno ba'al tashon. Listen to this, Rabbi say. So now we have the following situation. So Rabbi say, listen to this. If you just go ahead and you offer them, you separate them out stam. So I'll say stam means I don't go ahead and articulate at the end of the day what it's for. Then halacha l'maisa, or when we say, in other words, I don't articulate that this is for Yom Rishon. I don't articulate that. If you don't articulate that, then halacha l'maisa, whatever you offered up on day number 1, you could offer up l'shem shamei chagigah, but whatever's left over on day 2, you can't offer up. However, if you go ahead and you set aside 10 chagigahs, and you say, my intention is to offer up these chagigahs on the first day of Yom Tiv, and then what happens? You only offer up 5. You're allowed to offer up the remaining 5 on day number 2. Why? Because I will say, since you articulated that they're all being offered up on day number 1, or that was your intention, whatever's offered up on day number 2 is clearly a makeup for day number 1. So as long as what you're offering up on day number 2 is tethered to day number 1, ultimately, again, it's not a problem of Bal Tosif. So the Gemara says, well, let's analyze this. So we'll say, we'll stop over here. We'll stop over here for today with this Haisan. So we'll pick up with this case. So I just want to point out, Baruch Hashem, first of all, it's nice. We're now officially caught up with the 7.5-year Daf Yomi cycle, right? Which is always good, right? They'll say, but again, we covered an incredible amount of ground, established a lot of constructs. Emir Hashem, again, now we're going to get into this case of starting Chagigahs on day 1, leftover Chagigahs on to day 2. What can or can't I do with those karbanos? To be continued tomorrow. We'll say shkoyach.
Good job.
Thank you. Okay, let me just give me 1 second. Ready.
Our CFO was asking about the comment. I was like, do you want to come? He said, I don't think about it.
Okay.
Can I just send him an invite?
Should you or should I? Do you want to send
He was like,
do you want to send me? How about you just send me this? Skip. Just send me all the emails.
Fine. The other thing is fine, I'll send you that. Howard asked me, he said, can you send me a copy of the invite? I sent him a copy because I'm not that one. He sends me. I went on with Esther. Are we not sending this out?
I sent it out to whoever